So before the video begins, I want to mention that you can see on the video that the quality is not that good. I found why is it like this, and if you can't read the code on the video, you can go to the video description to get the different scripts, which I will publish in the Git for each episode. And have a nice time watching this video. So, let's do this. Hi everyone, here is Julie, your favorite Polish mad lad. Today we're gonna do in this episode how to spawn our player by the server. So in this episode we're gonna see events and in general the bold dot instantiate and some entity and other little things like this. To begin, we're gonna head to our Snow 2 scene. In here we're gonna create an empty object which will be named player. This object will be used as a prefab. So here we're gonna create a capsule collider, or a capsule object, more likely, and in it we're gonna create a cube which we're gonna remove its collider like for the capsule. Let's first add ground for our scene. So here, yeah, let's center everything like here. Okay, and our ground gonna be set in 0, 0.1 in height and 10 in length. So let's put our player some in a higher position. Here we're gonna rename the capsule renderer as renderer. We're gonna set our cube inside renderer, and we're gonna make him a pair of goggles like this, so we can know where is the forward of our player, and the forward of our player is here, like this, and that's it. So we're gonna add here some simple things like collider, a capsule collider of a height of 2, a rigid body like this with continuous collision detection and with constraints in the freeze rotation on every axis, so that our player don't tilt when he moves. And of course we're gonna add a bolt entity to finish this. So in our bolt entity, he demands us to assign a state. So in here we have 2 states that I created before this tutorial. So we're gonna remove all of them. And so we at first gonna create a state. A state is mainly a thing that we use to synchronize variables on the network. So at first let's create our physics state. Why do we create a physics state? Because we want to use it for more than one object. So let's add to it a transform that way it will be synchronized on the network, and here we're gonna make it so it will replicate to be everyone except the controller. So to explain what is a controller, we're gonna at first think about how entities works in Bolt. Entities are things that are synchronized on the network. So this mainly means that everything that will move on the network, that everything that will communicate on the network will be an entity. An entity can be controlled or can be owned by a client or an instance of the game, mainly. So in our network architecture, we will predict the movement on the client side, but the server will be responsible of everything that we do. So here, that means that the server will be the owner of every entity on the server, and the player will be the controller of the entity, so of his entity, so mainly the player prefab. So here we're gonna copy the transform component on everyone except the controller, because mainly the player don't need to simulate or to copy its transform, because it will already move on the server. So here we can hit some compression, mainly because it will help the network to be faster, like this, and the rotation can be just compressed by using the y-axis, of course. So everything's done, I think. Yeah. Let's hit now our player prefab. So if we want to assign or state, normally you don't have any of them, because mainly they are not loaded in your game. So for that you're gonna need to compile your game like this, so here, and when you has compiled it, so here you will be able to select state on your entity, so like this, so physics state, yeah, and you will now need to hit one more time compile button, because the entity needs to be assigned to the state, and that generates files and more network logic. And to finish this, we're gonna need to create a folder which we will name prefabs, and we will drag our player prefab in it. So now we can undo this prefab and we can go to our scripts. So now what we're gonna need? We're gonna need as a player an interface where we're gonna select our player. So for purposes of our tutorial, we're gonna just create a panel. Don't forget to change here the scale to 120, here 1080, of course, and hit 0.5 here. So now we have our panel, and this panel will be mainly used to set up our player. So set up player panel. In it we're gonna add a button which gonna help us to send the request to create a player from our player on the server. So this button will help us to spawn the player on the server. So for this, we're gonna create a new script on the object, which we're gonna name setup player setup controller here, and this script gonna help us to simply send the request and to interpret the request when the server will receive it. So at first, what we're gonna need in it will be a reference of our game. So offer game object. So here. So at first we're gonna need to remove the default things of the script, and let's create a serialized field with a private variable, game object variable, and here we're gonna hit setup panel. Yeah, name it like this, and we're gonna need something like the Bolt library to simply get the global event listener, because mainly we will show this panel only if our scene has finished to load. So load local done like this if our scene has been finished to load. So we check here if the Bolt network is a server. If it's not a server, that means we can set active or set a panel. So here we're gonna at first need to make the button much larger and add some text to it like this, best fit, and let's say it will be spawn. So yeah, and player setup controller, we're gonna add our setup player panel. So now our button needs to call something. This will be an event. So let's say our button will be spawn player. We'll call a function that will be named spawn player, and in order to make an event, we at first need to create one in our Bolt assets. So create a new event. The only type of events that we can create is a global event, because this is the only type that we can create when we don't have any entity spawned in this scene. And even if we have an entity, I don't think you can send any if you are not the owner of the entity. So the problem is very quickly resolved. So spawn player event, and here we're gonna hit none for entity senders and only client for the global senders. So let's bolt assets and hit the compile button. Now we can, if the bolt finishes to compile, we can see something like so in order to make the player send that we want to create a player entity, we need to simply create a variable event. So we're gonna create a spawn player event variable. So to create an instance of it, we just need to write it like that, and in the global target we're gonna hit only server, that we don't send the events to everyone, and it's better like this. So spawn player event is created, but we didn't send it, so now we need to send it, and our spawn player function is finished, but we don't interpret at any moment this function. So we need to override an on-event spawn player event. So like this. So you just take your event out like that, and here, if we want to instantiate our entity, we just need to get a bolt entity which will be created soon via the bolt network dot instantiate. And here, if we hit the different function arguments, we can see that we can use prefab ID. So this means mainly we don't need to pass a prefab like here. So like the setup panel, we can just hit prefab bolt prefabs here dot player, because we registered a prefab with a bolt entity, and this entity has been registered in the bolt prefabs because we compiled at one point our game with this prefab registered in the prefabs folder. So here we're gonna just spawn it in a normal vector-free way, so like this. And of course we're gonna need to make a rotation. This can be identity.quaternion.identity. So now we have spawned our player, but we don't have access to its controls. So we need to hit entity.assign control, and here we need a bolt connection. So we get the bolt connection of our player by just seeing who raised the event. So like this. And so now that we have created a function to send an event and to interpret the event, now we just need to assign this function to our button. So let's create two instances of the onClick. Let's the first be the game object dot set panel unchecked, set active unchecked, and of course the player setup with the player spawn player function. Put the script in the scripts. Oh, like this, like this, like this. Oh no, maybe in generals. Yeah, maybe in generals. It's a general script because it helps to set the game. Yeah, it has some general points. So here, let's just hide the panel because we don't want it to appear if we are the server. Of course, we build the game here. Yeah. Try again. So yeah, it has built its instance. And let's start in our folder, bolt tutorial folder, server instance of the game. So like this. So it will be started normally. Here, let's hit tab to hide the bolt console. And it will be searching, connected, and voila, it has the button to which shows to us. Now we hit, and voila, the bolt network has received an event and spawned the player. So, and we can see somewhere here that we gained the control over this entity. Maybe I don't see it. Yeah, maybe not. But we can start more clients now. Let's hit another one. Yeah, it spawns automatically and it will appear on the player. And it has been synchronized on the network like normal. So everything is good. Our games works. We can spawn an entity and we can access it to it and everything. So nice. Thank you for watching. Let's leave a like on this under this video. Comment if you want to watch more of this content. Don't forget to check our social media, so Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, of course, even if you are subscribed. We are posting other videos, like maybe in the future some gameplay of our game Vandalhalla. And yeah, so thank you, and remember to code every day.